Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to yet another webinar by TeamLease. This has kind of become a ritual for all of us. At TeamLease, every Tuesday we do a webinar 11 to 12, and we have quite an intense conversation around taking views from experts. This is our 42nd week. Over the last 1 year, we've covered multiple topics, from impact of COVID to putting India back to work, creating formal employment, and building agility through new workforce model. Our topic for today's discussion is digital transformation in workforce management. So before we get started, let me introduce our expert panel that we have with us. So we have with us Pranit Soni. She is head of HR retail finance at Piramal Group. She is an HR leader who comes with more than 15 years plus experience, and her expertise areas includes performance management, HR operation, employee engagement, succession planning, compensation and benefits in both India and Southeast Asia and major markets. Prior to Piramal, she's worked with leading companies like Bharti AXA Life Insurance, Jardine, Lord Thompson, and IBM. She is an MBA in HR from Symbiosis Institute of Business Management. We also have with us Mr. Dinesh Bhojwani. Dinesh leads he's the head of HR for Star Union Daiichi Life Insurance Company, comes with more than 20 plus years experience in industries of life and general insurance, banking, retail, and IT. Dinesh has earlier worked with leading companies, including IndusInd Bank, Tata AIA Life Insurance, Reliance Digital Retail, ICICI Lombard. And last but not the least, we have Ms. Swati Singh. Swati heads the HR function and is a part of executive team at IDFC Asset Management. She brings in with more than 18 plus years of professional experience, as well as her passion as a life and a leadership coach. Swati has earlier worked with leading companies, including Bombay Dyeing, MediaWorks, Future Retail, and ICICI Bank. She has an MBA with IIM Lucknow, from IIM Lucknow, and holds a master degree, from BITS Pilani. So welcome all of you. We today have a lot of experience and rather diverse experience among today's panelists, and it would be quite insightful for all of us out here. Before we move ahead, I would like to set some ground rules. I'm sure all of you will have questions in the Q&A session. And I request to feel free to put all the Q&A, all your questions in the Q&A tab instead of the chat box. I think that will help us monitor it effectively and take your questions for possible response. So without further delay, I would like to start with my first set of questions. And today, I think the role of technology has amplified significantly over past few months, and irrespective of the current situation that we all are in, technology has been a key enabler in growth for organizations. So my first question goes to you, Pranit. Now, how is technology critical in HR, and how has it evolved over the years? So your perspective, around that.
Sure. Thanks, Amit. Thanks for having me here. I think technology was always playing a role in the way HR was managed. But of late, in the last 2 years, thanks to the pandemic, the adoption of technology has increased multifold in all aspects of life, and definitely it has transformed the way we engage with our employees, the way we deliver our services to the employees as well. And hence technology today has become very, very critical in the way organizations and their workforce interact with each other, whether it's hiring of the talent, scouting for the right set of people to match your requirements, onboarding them onto the organization, learning and development initiatives, performance management. I think all aspects of HR today are very strongly not just touched by technology, but are reliant on technology to make it accessible to the employees. And I know in HR we generally talk about multiple generations that we are handling, and how some of the younger generation is more attuned to technology. But I think what we have realized is that now technology has become the default for all age groups, and people are looking for technology to not just provide accessibility but also convenience. And HR is no different in from that expectations. The employees expect a seamless experience, a seamless way to engage with their organization, whether it's the learning interventions or it's having access to their own documents, their own requirements on the system. The expectation is now that everything should be on my fingertips, and everything should be accessible to me, not just on my laptop but also on my mobile. No, no, and in that respect, making sure that all our HR services are tech enabled becomes very, very important. And hence I've seen much more use of technology in today's landscape than I've seen in my start of my career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just talking, it's become the heart of everything that we do. So, so Dinesh, over to you. I mean, what how is critical in HR, and how has it evolved over the years from your perspective?
Okay, fair. Thank you, Amit, and morning all. See, evolution is what we are, what we are talking about here. When I see or entered the first time when I entered the workforce, HR was thought that okay, it was, I mean, thought about HR was that, look, HR and technology, maybe it's okay, on the fringes, margins, and what will happen is there would be certain functions that can be managed through HR, which will only be transactional in nature. For example, attendance management was an issue, and for large organizations, spread across length and breadth of India with pin code setups, we said, how do we address this? So the first, the technology was introduced in form of biometric, you see. Okay, and then there came internet that supported biometric, and you could have marked your attendance from anywhere. Then came document handling of people, because loads of documents that we in HR fraternity ask from an employee, you see, and those were that we were moving papers from one place to another. Papers were being moved from branch offices to the corporate office, and that's where the employee codes were created. And employee code creation was such a big thing at that point of time, you see. So if you ask me, today it looks like we are talking about Stone Age, yeah, but then it has evolved like any other function. Sales, for that matter, was always face to face. Somebody will come at your doorstep and will knock, and that will be a cold call, yeah. Then telephones came in, and we said, okay, we will fix up appointments with people, and these will be pre-booked appointments, and people will walk in and they will come to your doorstep, but prefixed appointments. Then came the technology. Then came something that Praneeth was also talking about, that look, everything should be available on the fingertips. Now, if that is for the customers, what should that be for an employee? Employee, I see my workforce. If I speak about Star Union Daiichi, my workforce is born around 1990. So my average age is about 31 years. Now, I would believe that these people 31-year born and 31-year-old and people who are born later, have a natural, selection for technology. It comes naturally to them because they are born in that era. Now, if technology is on their fingertips, and if it is such a great utility for all the exercises or everything that you do, whether it is sales or whether you do an employee transaction, why not? So therefore, we also woke up, the so-called leaders in the current HR fraternity, and we said, okay, let us adopt this even within the HR function. And then there came the vendors with all their help, yeah. And then currently then came the pandemic, and we said, okay, whether it is forced or naturally adopted, we will have to make this a part of life, whether it is right at the hiring stage, whether you would want to do an assessment or a virtual webinar of this kind. I mean, I would have been very happy to sit on a dais or a platform where there are people watching, and there's an arena, and one would also enjoy asking questions across the table, yeah, or across the dais, and from the podium. But then what is happening is, this is what the reality is. So therefore, we also adopted technology in every sense, right from hiring. So the interviews were first set of questions. Okay, just let me quote an example if I have 1 minute. We went to the campuses this time, and we said, okay, we will deploy some sort of a technology where there are prefixed questions. Those will be asked as the first round of interview to the candidates in campus. They will respond back. We will check the responses, validate their responses against the data which is already available, and then we will progress to the next round of interviews. That's how it started in hiring. Then there is payroll has always existed, and every organization loves to outsource the payroll to the third party, because there is a lot of a lot of transactional work that takes place. So you prepare your attendance and pass it on to the vendor, and he will do all the tax calculations and everything. But then PMS, yes, and PMS I'm still figuring out how, because one size does not fit all. So how do we really make sure that it is applicable, its applicability is universal, and it is fair to you and to me and to everybody else in the organization. So that's one area. But hiring, in addition to this, any kind of employee queries, those are also handled with the help of the robots and the technology that we are now adopting. As a matter of fact, this year only I hired 3 people in my own team who have worked on technology, specifically on HR technology in different organizations. So that's the team strength, and that's also the landscape. That's how it is changing. My own HR ecosystem is changing, and so is everybody else's. HR system that must be that ecosystem that must be changing. So I think technology is this. Now we should only speak about how will technology evolve further. Like insurance company is not an insurance company; it's a fintech company. Similarly, HR is not HR; it is technology and HR. It is HR and technology. At a point of time, it will be technology and HR. Yeah, but people relevance will not go away. So if it is developing anxiety or curiosity in somebody's mind, people will remain at the core of the technology. Earlier, the non-core functions were handled through technology. Now, core functions are also being handled through technology in HR. So this is my submission to to response to the question that you.
No, absolutely. I think you reminded me of the good old days in 2007 when I joined TeamLease. We used to fix up meetings with customers via faxes or drop an email and then call them that we have dropped a mail, please check, because that the periodicity on which you will check mails was once in a week kind of thing. But yeah, I think we've come a long way in not only at the support function, but also at the core functions usage of technology. So Swati, how from your perspective it's pan out, because each and every one of us have been touched upon somewhere in our journey on technology. So how has been over the years? Because you've spent some time with IBM. I mean, the thought was that IBM and many of us earlier had a thought that there are few technology companies who are doing something, but now it's transformed into our daily usage of stuff. So how do you see this spanning out?
Sure. So just a minor correction, I was not with IBM. I think that was Pardeep. But anyway, I think I have a very different take. So my career journey didn't start as being part of HR. my HR journey has been towards the much later part of my career. So I started as an employee, and if I go back to my career 20 days back, I think the whole aspect of technology that we saw in HR was largely restricted to receiving our pay slips, being able to log our attendance, and having all the and that was not true of all companies, but in that time ICICI had come up with this really state-of-the-art intranet, and we could see all the HR policies there and actually run a search on it if we wanted to search for something, and that felt like wow, right? Over the years, I think we saw technology play a bigger role in the evolvement of the HRMS systems and maintenance of employee records and managing a recruitment process and stuff. But I think what the distinct change that I think we've seen, and in a very expedited way in the last 1.5 years with the COVID evolution, is the adoption of technology in two areas which were completely untouched by technology earlier. One is the whole employee engagement piece, because that was largely seen as a human interaction piece. And the second is the L&D piece, I think, where technology use was very, very limited. These were the two areas, I think, which the COVID pandemic has forced upon us to really rethink and evolve ourselves and see how technology can work as an enabler. And that is where I felt personally that there was a huge jump in the usage of technology in HR with the COVID pandemic. But yes, over the years it has evolved. And now, of course, there is this whole evolution that's happening around the recruitment process, where part of the recruitment at least can be managed by technology, especially where people need to recruit in huge numbers, or screening of candidates, and even sort of in tackling biases at the time of recruitment. So I think that is the other evolving area that I see. But really, to me, that jump shift has been in managing the engagement piece using technology, which we never saw earlier.
Right, absolutely. I think in each function there is some or the other baby steps which are being taken. In fact, a recent example, and during the COVID time, so we on a monthly basis, onboard anywhere between 6,000 to 8,000 resources, right? So because of the churn which kind of comes in, and we used to see about 62% people used to do onboarding through using an onboarding tool, right, through a technology. However, I think post-COVID, that number has jumped to about 95%. And suddenly our own mindset, we used to answer ourselves saying that, these are blue collar workforce, they are not very adapting to technology. But then I think suddenly we've seen the shift, and whether it's a driver that you are hiring, or it's a factory workforce, or a picker, packer, loader in a warehouse, I think they have started using this as a platform, and it's quite remarkable, from that perspective. Vinit, I'm coming back to you. What is your view on on digital HR? We see biggest gaps in tech adoption in the HR life cycle. I mean, like Swati was mentioning, various domains, whether it's hiring, onboarding, payroll, performance management, which Dinesh mentioned, or L&D. Where do you think are the biggest gaps in tech adoption?
So I think it's like both Dinesh and Swati also alluded to, that the adoption of technology in the last 2 years has been not an option. It wasn't by choice. It was mostly a necessity. We all had to adapt to new ways of working, and technology had to step in. And because of that, there are some technologies which were able to embed themselves very seamlessly. Like you mentioned, onboarding. Most of us have moved to now online onboarding. Many of us are looking at ways of automating parts of our recruitment process, etc. L&D had already started to go on to tech platforms, leveraging technology for e-learning and self-paced learning, etc. And that has grown even more in this area. But some of the other aspects which I feel are are slowly catching up, which had a very strong human touch to those processes. Engagement, for example, and Swati briefly spoke about how engagement is changing today, and it is with the influx of social media and our personal and professional lives merging. The way we engage with the external talent and internal talent is going through a lot of change. But I think there is still a lot that is yet to come. Not everybody has adopted technology and engagement at the same level. So I think we will, and even from a marketplace perspective, the kind of options which are available to engage beyond conducting regular R&R or pulse check, etc. I think those offerings are also at a very nascent stage. They will evolve over a period of time to suit to the demand that is getting created by the virtual workforce. So that's one area where I see there is scope and things will change and improve. The other aspect I think is around performance management. We just a month or so back, we finished our performance appraisal cycle. Many of us in HR would have gone through the same routine as well. And in the past, we have always done the performance feedback conversations face to face. We would actually, as part of our training programs to managers, we would encourage them that please block proper time, sit face to face, discuss over a cup of coffee, sandwich the feedback, good, balance out the good and the bad and all of that. And this time it was all about doing the same connect, but virtually. So how do you make sure that technology does not dilute the human factor in such a conversation, that the openness with which a manager would give the feedback and an employee would share their career aspirations and their concerns and questions. Technology should not dilute that. How do we make sure that technology is an enabler and not a deterrent in this process? I think that's another area where we are still evolving. Of course, many of us have used the basic Teams and Zoom calls to do these conversations. At least we have been able to see face to face while on the laptops or phones. But I think how do we set the goals? How do we cascade the goals? How do we have the regular checkpoints? Those are areas where I think we still have to go beyond the very basic technology that we have today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right in saying, I think the tech adoption, while the new things have come, but adoption still remains this thing, and whether or not it's sustainable adoption, I think that only time will say. Dinesh, I mean, you in your opening remarks, touched upon the performance management, system, and there are still areas, which are gaps. But what, according to you, are the other areas where the tech adoption, one is on the lower side, and how do we make it much more human, in nature? Because in our urge of improving productivity, just pushing an employee is not going to yield a sustainable, result. So what, according to you, are the areas where, tech adoption is still low and should be worked upon?
Yeah. So I'll go, first on a different route where technology has been able to, make the difference. And we seem to have adopted the technology fully well, having championed it for some time. Reason is that we got an experience of onboarding about 2,500 people the last year. So because of the growth of the industry and additional partnerships that we had, now this helped the entire HR team and the managers in the field to champion hiring processes, hiring related interviewing and assessment processes, to onboarding process. So therefore, until there, it has been seamless, you see. Yeah. Now comes an L&D also, right from the induction process, which is necessity, which is hard and fast to, and the contents of the induction and the induction itself both changed. But having done this for for a year and a half now, the teams seem to have developed some kind of confidence, and they are comfortable doing it. Now, what is happening is, I think in the performance appraisal, performance management process, which should be a round the year exercise, we have this was our second year where we had to choose technology over face-to-face discussions or the face-to-face trainings, because last year we did in the same time, March and April, and this year also we were hit by the second wave in the same time of the year. Yeah, so it was again, there were plans. Thankfully, the survey results in quarter 3 were so positive that everybody was gung-ho about the rewards and compensation, you see. Yeah, but then unfortunately, quarter 4, by the end of the quarter 4, this hit again. Having said this, we had plans. How will we, bring them onto that dialogue which did not happen the last year? How do we make sure that the workforce that has recently joined us or joined throughout the last year will also adopt to the ways and means the way we would wish to? We had envisaged our talks or the performance dialogue or those conversations to take place. I think we will have to move away from this year-end or mid-year exercise, and what we will have to use technology to do is that every in some way, okay, I will deviate a little to make sure that there is no conflict or friction amongst the workforce that is operating on the field, or there is no heartburn there. What we have started doing it with the help of technology, we have started publishing a communication, not only the reports or the MIS or the data, but also some sort of communication every month, which is enabled by the technology. So I am aware where am I, but that will address 85% of my frontline sales guys and their supervisors. So moving from a mid-year exercise to a year-round exercise, what we have done is we are using technology to make sure that the communication happens. If the dialogue is a little distant, but still that communication happens, then they get an additional platform to talk to each other. You see the supervisor and the frontline sales guy, or the supervisor and his supervisor or supervisor. We would also want to make sure that that we will not resort to mid-year exercises and year-end exercises, even in the executive roles. Yeah, and it has to be some sort of a conversation that should happen. And it is not only about dialogue that will happen on, virtually screen over screen, but it is also about that we publish the performance, we publish the goals first, and we are trying to find out ways where, for example, the HRMS that we use, it makes us, it enables every employee of SUD Life to record their own performances, other than what has been mentioned in the goal sheet or the KRAs or the KPIs. So if I have done something good, I can punch that into the, into that HRMS. So it gets recorded. And whenever the dialogue is happening or the conversation is happening, it does not have that recency effect or some sort of an effect that, look, I was bad in the last month, but and therefore 11 months have also, kind of drained. Then is because again, to me, everything else is fine, which is L&D is fine. It can be conveyed, delivered, and effectiveness can be measured. Hiring, onboarding is also fine. To some extent, we will also have engagement that we will figure out ways to. But what is important in the current times is also objective performance management. And therefore, I will keep coming back to performance management and how do we measure and how do we make sure that we are fair with people, yeah, and people are performing. Because what I've realized in the last 1 year, actually nobody comes to workplace to fail, and they have applied their heart and soul even during tough times. And I've found people fighting during COVID also. So therefore, it becomes our obligation and responsibility to set those objectives. Now I'm trying to figure out whether monthly mode, okay, what is objectivity in performance management? How do that dialogue happen? Because too much of screen also develops some sort of fatigue. I don't want to stay on Microsoft Teams for the rest of the day. I would also want to go step out and meet and and do a face to face. Now, how do we do that? Is that I'm grappling with, we are struggling with, and we will figure out in time how do we really adopt technology there, or a right blend of technology and face-to-face meetings would have the answer. Yeah, but to me, the underlying area is performance management and how do we manage it.
Thanks, Dinesh. I think you're right. I think we all are social animals, and meeting people gives a different kick altogether. However, in times like this, I think tech will play an important role. And like you rightly said, I think performance management is one area where we have to bring in the objectivity, around it. Swati, what's been your experience, around technology adoption? Because um, one is that these are some of the technologies which are available in the market, and or some of the organizations are using. And I remember my first job used to have a swipe card, for attendance, and many of the salespeople like me used to give it to the office boy, who used to do the needful every day morning, right? Because he's the one who used to always come on time. But I mean, things have changed, right? So there was a time where organizations started doing geo tracking so that they can kind of track, and some of the organization thought was to track whether people are coming on time or not. At the same time, I've also come across organizations who are trying to go away from that, saying, I don't want to track people like this. I want to give them, empower them to work the way they want, and which I think can link to what Dinesh was alluding, saying, performance management. How can I judge them on performance of heart and soul that they put, instead of, just using technology to kind of monitor. How's been your, what's your view around this challenge and the tech adoption piece?
Sure. So I think I have 2 or 3 thoughts here, and some of it is linked to what Dinesh and Praneeth already spoke about. And one is, I think we first of all use the term technology as a very generic term, and I think that itself has been evolving so fast. So maybe 15-20 years back, when we spoke about technology, even then we spoke about it. What it meant is, are you able to send a proper email? Are you sort of able to use a mobile phone? They were just getting in. And I remember some colleagues saying, I don't want a mobile, it impinges on my personal time. And now nobody will say that. You can't live without one. And are you able to do some bit of self-help that was evolving at that time through the use of technology? And versus now, where technology has become the basis of many things. So I think maybe just having a sort of taking a step back and looking out and saying the different generations, so to say, in our workforce, and people who have evolved over different periods of time or come from different backgrounds, are they on the same page versus what are the technology enablers that we are using in our organization? And how do we take everybody along and make sure that whatever are our objectives are met? So I think, to me, that is a big piece, and I think that has sort of, at least till now, got partially unnoticed. So I think because technology is evolving really fast, and so doing that, I think, is important, taking everybody along. The other, I think, we all, of course, while we were adopting technology over the last few decades, but in the last 1.5, 2 years, it really started with knee-jerk reactions, and then we all settled into usage of it, and we become more familiar and comfortable. However, still running the old way, and we are all seeing this as temporary. In that sense, we are all thinking, okay, COVID will get over one day and we all go back to office. Not exactly happen that way. So really developing and thinking about what will be the sustainable new model of work, and what role technology will play over there. And linking back to what Dinesh was saying, because largely the presence in office gives us that comfort, because it helps to build trust and closeness. I think, how do we do that in the new environment using technology? And part of that is to link with saying, how do we build trust so that productivity or performance management is not around monitoring every minute and every move, but rather tracking people on the delivery and the output, and saying that they will maybe have flexibility or they will take ownership on their own. I think evolving that and striking that right balance is going to be very, very important to be a useful enabler for us to succeed as organizations in the future. So I think, to me, these are the 2 factors.
I think very interesting point, because I think balancing between technology and humans, I think that is going to play a very important role. And one of the new terminology, at least for me in last 4 or 5 years, in the HR is come up is HR analytics. Like every aspect or every function have its own positives and negatives, right? Now, and HR analytics is supposed to be more or better enabler to the employees for their own personal, gains or professional, growth. So Pranit, I'm coming to you, how is HR analytics, or how is analytics helping, us? If you can help us understand the role of analytics in digital HR, because there's a lot of data point which is, kind of coming up, and how do we utilize is going to be important thing. So if you can throw some light around this.
Sure. I think that's a very valid point you've brought up, and like you rightly said, analytics has been the buzzword for the last few years, and we've all spoken about analytics and big data and how can that impact the way we do HR. But what has again, because of necessity of the pandemic, with so much of our processes going online, it also generated a lot of data which was earlier not captured in such a manner. Whether it's the amount of candidates we have profiled before we pick that one candidate, or how that one candidate was able to onboard, was the day one experience as seamless as we always propagated to our stakeholders that day one experience is very good. But now, because whether on the day one, the email, the accessibility, everything was ready or not ready is on the system itself, right? Whether the people have been able to meet their numbers, their incentives, their targets, etc. Everything is now by default getting captured on the system. Earlier, we had to follow up with people, mark your attendance, mark your this, make sure your leaves are updated, make sure this is updated, goals are put in the system, checkpoints are happening or not happening. Now, by default, all of this has to happen on the system because there is no face-to-face interaction happening with that frequency. So that gives an access to a lot of data. And I think as a fraternity, we are still evolving and understanding how to use that data that we have now got access to. But some initial trends have started to come in. So, for example, we are in pyramid retail now, trying to see if we can, especially for the bulk hiring piece or the volume hiring piece, can we move to interview-less hiring process now, where it is purely driven by data? Because again, it's bulk, it's volume, it's a high churn environment, and there are, over a period of time, looking at the data, we are able to identify certain success profiles. Will be able to come and settle down and be more productive for you. These are early days, but it's a model that we hope to evolve over a period of time, and if it does reach a level where it becomes stable, then it will take care of a lot of our effort input, which goes on in just managing the frontline hiring. Similarly in L&D, right? Learning has always been blamed for being not being very transparent, and we have not been able to assess the outcome of a learning intervention. But now with a lot of, again, access to data, access to people's performance, the way people behave, if there has been a learning intervention, how it has impacted the outcome of the overall organization. There is early days again, but there is possibility for us to look at that data and that analytics to track the efficacy of a learning intervention. So I think, and of course, the regular dashboards, attrition management, performance management, demographic management, these are now have been around. We all have used them, so I'll not talk so much about that. But I think the impact of data on hiring and L&D much in the past as I'm seeing today.
No, very interesting point. In fact, that reminds me, doing a meeting in early 2008 with the general insurance company. I won't name the head of HR whom I was meeting, and they called immediately for a meeting in evening 5 o'clock and said that we want to hire 2,000 people in 40 days time. And I was looking at my colleague saying, how the hell are we going to hire 2,000 people in 40 days time? He looked at us and immediately understood. He said, guys, we are just looking 2 hands and 2 legs. We don't mind if brains are not attached. And that was the kind of hiring which was, pre 2008-9, which we have seen. In fact, to an extent that we have also put boards outside our offices saying trespassers will be recruited, right? But I think a decade from that point today, productivity is playing a very, very important role. This thing, and you made a very important point. And I hope as a consultant, we see that interview-less process, takes in place, because today, I think the biggest challenge that we all are going to face is the skill gap, which is going to widen over a period of time, and hence, reaching out to as many people at the time of hiring, because we also want to reduce attrition, by not hiring anybody and everybody. But this is to the other end, saying without interviews, taking people. So it's going to play an important pivotal role in making this as a mature process. Dinesh, any of your thoughts? I mean, I know you've said that last 1 year you've hired in bulk. If somebody would have come to you, saying, here's the technology, please take an video interview, or, use analytics, how would be your reaction, and what do you think future would be like, at least on the analytics part of hiring or any other function?
Today, I will jump to that opportunity. And I quite like the idea of interview-less, selection. Yeah, it is because see, I'm sitting in front of you. I am data, okay, and everybody else on the participants that we have, and everybody else is data. And this is I'm not referring. This is not condescending, but actually we are data, and this is not to demean anybody, but this is human being is data. You see, what I've seen is at some point of time it was very fashionable to produce. Started at MIS, then into beautiful presentations, then into analytics, and the business lines took it first because there was a tangible impact, followed by science, when science blended with HR, at some point of time. Then it became analytics within HR. And now what I've seen in the recent past is that we are making meaningful use of this, and it is really helping us to take those decisions. And I'm not saying it for the sake of saying it. And I admit that at some point of time it was fashionable to have this, but at this point of time it is reality. There is so much of data about an employee, and that enables you. And there is plenty of tools available today that will make sure that you can blend, mix, match, create your own. You can decipher your own meanings. What do you actually want? It is helpful in moving a person as micro as moving a person from a particular location to another location, to what is the need, how do we use it to develop an individual, how do we use that in an individual development IDPs, and if you ask me, data right from the employment data, which is available, which is about the candidate, then the employee data, then the entire life cycle of an employee, that data is available. And what I've realized is, if data is used well, problems like attrition can be curtailed, if not contained completely, but can be curtailed to a large extent. Because finally, and there are plenty of examples. In the interest of the time, I would not like to make it, because retail industry has used it beautifully. The data about a customer, and which is much more difficult to manage. Having said this, data about the employee and the right analytics can lead to the right decision, okay, and therefore it is reality. Therefore, analytics is important within HR. Therefore, it is being taught now, in the curriculums. So therefore, it becomes very important. And I am for data, not for boardrooms, but beyond that, in making decisions and making sure that it fructifies in the right, possible ways.
And I mean, you're right. I think you have to take the data analytics to the next, stage. While, like Pranit was mentioning, I mean, in recent past, we've started seeing a lot of, data which is coming out, with the implementation of technology, and how we use that data will play a very important role for future, this thing. And also, I think from employee engagement perspective, it will play an important role, because you can then have a meaningful discussion, with the employees basis their individual data and pattern, this thing. Your industry, or sector don't hire in volumes, right? Like what the industry would do, and you would look at very specific niche, segment of resources, which also gives some advantage, because your volume is not that high, but at the same time, every employee count a lot, right? Every iteration. And I think in my past conversations with you, you have mentioned that you've been able to control attrition excellently, right, as an organization. And and to my mind, retaining people or attrition is not only giving better wages, right? I mean, there are so many small elements that play a role, including data which kind of comes in, because you have to keep people motivated and engaged, and so many things. So I mean, would you want to share some experiences on how you have been using data effectively, or what do you think future should be in terms of data usage? I think that will give a very nice experience to every one of us.
So I think there are two things which are very specific to our industry, like you said, and one of them, I think, where we use data extensively is compensation, because in our industry and because of the regulatory requirement, compensation for all our sort of leadership largely gets published, right? So it's there in the public domain, and compensation benchmarking is something we do extensively. It's particularly done in this industry, and we as a company also do it, which allows us to be competitive and just strike the right balance between not underpaying or over sort of spending, and being able to peg our compensation correctly. So I think that is one area where we are definitely able to use analytics very effectively. And that, I would say, is largely data driven. The other side, where I think it's a mix of quantitative and qualitative data, and where we as an organization have evolved and we are using analytics, if I were to say, or data to support us, is the whole employee engagement and culture building piece. So I think with the evolution of technology and just the ability to listen to employees and collect that qualitative and some bit of quantitative data and analyze it and say, how can we do meaningful engagement with employees? How are their priorities shifting? It's almost like you mentioned earlier about a sales company. The whole market has been shifting towards saying, how do you do mass customization, right? And that kind of approach, are we able to take to employee engagement, I would say. So I think, are we as evolved as the sales models have evolved? No. But I think we are definitely using analytics in that way of both qualitative and quantitative data to drive culture building and employee engagement. And I think the third step, which we are not yet doing, and I haven't really heard of it, but I think which could evolve in the HR space and would be useful, is really predictive modeling on analytics. So are we able to say which are our employees which are at the highest risk of attrition, which is what sales functions do, right, for customers, especially relationship-based businesses like banks and maybe wealth management and those kind of customers. Even retail now does it. So if we evolve to that kind of a thing, I think that would bring in a lot of meaningful decision making and action in HR.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think that's going to be a need of an hour, as we move ahead, accepting technology in our lives. In fact, while we are almost near the time and it's time for Q&A, but I have a couple of questions around, some more questions around. So let me pick up the one which is kind of come in this box at least. So how do you ensure behavioral issue with technology, and how you access through technology employee mental health during this pandemic? So any one of you, if you want to pick up this aspect of the question, how do we access or use technology through employee mental health during this pandemic? Because all of us have gone through some or the other such situation, which makes it difficult to balance between work and this thing. So is there any right uses of technology?
So let me take a stab at it, Amit. I think it's very difficult to assess the mental health of employees with technology. It's even difficult to do it in a live face-to-face environment. Technology can only, I feel, make things slightly more difficult. But what technology has done in this space is it has made remedies for mental health much more accessible. Many of us would have introduced employee well-being initiatives, especially during these last 1.5 years, where most of our employees have gone through a tremendous mental pressure, whether it's worrying about the safety and well-being of their family and near and dear ones, or seeing the depressing situation all around us, managing the work-life balance, etc. And there have been many providers in the marketplace who have given some really useful options to connect with like-minded groups, have a conversation with people who are in the same boat as you, talk to a therapist in the comfort of your own home without the social stigma or pressure of seeing a specialist in this regard, etc. And I think that is extremely important. And even if we say that we are an evolved society, there is still a level of reservation when it comes to mental health. And if you have to come out and talk about it openly, it's still not that evolved. But if you get access to expert advice and access to niche groups from the comfort of your own home, from the privacy of your own home, that makes things slightly easier. So I think that for me has been a very helpful thing which I've provided to my employees, and I hope that it's gone a few steps towards helping them deal with this situation and the pressures that it brings in. But have we been able to measure the mental health of our employees? I don't think we have successfully done that.
You're right. I think we have not reached that stage, to kind of assess that. But I think steps like these, where we are, available for the employees, to at least talk it out, I think that plays also an important role. Dinesh, Swati, any one of you want to add to what said?
Yeah, so I sorry, Swati, can I? So what I completely agree that this can be used for identification of. Also, we understand that people are undergoing. If you have little empathy, you would understand that yes, people must be going through some challenges. Intuitively, we know that. What we have done in our own, little organization is we did we reached out to employees, again, using technology. We said, and there were some carefully crafted questions. We said, do you really need something like this? Now, this is something that, very, very directly that I'm telling you, but these were some questions where, respecting their privacy, respecting whether they would want to respond. And we did not seek names from any of them. So what we did, we went to a service provider, we spoke to them, and we also said that we don't want to straight away engage, for the reason of engaging. We would want you to help us with certain questions that we should be asking people, and then we validated the questions and we went to the employees through some surveys, again using some platforms and technology, which is easily available and universally available to all. People responded back. And people responded back, and we realized that significant number of people, not only here but everywhere else, would need this kind of a listening or a patient hearing, if not anything else. Yeah. We also tied up with one of the service providers who has provided us with a platform and application that is available to employees 24/7. Now these are two interventions using technology. There is machine available to your help, but at the same time we also created our own help desk, behind which there is a human being or a face sitting who is listening to you if you want to reach out to us. So I think identification definitely can be. Assessing how many of them, with certainty we cannot say that okay, this percentage of people would need help, or this is the intensity or the requirement of the help. But yes, in our own bit, it is important that we reach out to them. We try to give a number to that requirement or that need also, in order to make sure that if the organization wakes up to it, okay, and that is helping us.
You're right. I think you and Pranit both picked up the right point that you have to be there with a human touch, in those times. So, Swati, sorry, you were saying something.
No, I was saying that I think if I remember conversations with our employees, or whether it's in the personal circle with friends, I think the one thing that people have really missed, and if you ask them what is the one thing that you miss, is the human touch and the ability to stay connected with colleagues and to feel part of an organization, right? So I think while COVID sort of brought the distance, technology, we have tried to use it to bridge that distance and see how can we make people feel connected to the organization and to each other. So I think, and that's part of mental wellness, because that is what impacts people directly. And then obviously there is stress related fatigue and all of that is setting in, both due to COVID as well as due to work and not being able to take breaks, etc. So I think what we did is we've in fact last year and this year continued that theme. We've taken a theme of communication and collaboration internally, and we've consciously gone out and created avenues. For example, we used to do a half-yearly town hall with our employees. We've switched that to quarterly, and we've started doing an all-employee forum quarterly. We've actually been, sort of branded one thing called Fun at Fridays, and every Friday evening, we have been doing some kind of activity with family as well as employees, right? So those are the kind of things that help people to lighten up. And earlier, what I mentioned during analytics, we've created avenues to listen to our people, and for also encouraged our managers to go ahead and communicate with them. In fact, we've set up some intervention for our leadership team on how they can better engage their team members so that they are conscious about it. And it's a formal intervention, right? Apart from this, like Dinesh and Parneet mentioned, we actually signed up for a comprehensive wellness package for our employees as well as their families, so that all are covered, which includes mental wellness as well as other, accessible to other medical fraternity, because we realized that due to COVID, a lot of access to medical help which people require on a regular basis, especially those who have parents or young children at home, is completely becoming very, very difficult, and they are scared to step out and things are getting postponed. So we signed up for that. But I think the underlying theme for us has been communicate, listen, and keep people engaged. And I think that really helps with the mental wellness piece. I think measuring it, we've not attempted, we've not done it, but I also feel that maybe if we even attempted to do it, there are risks associated with it, because it could create biases in our own minds people may be going through a phase, and mental wellness is a tricky area that way. So I'm not sure how comfortable employees would be getting measured on it, as well as whether it could create biases for us in our decision making as an organization.
Absolutely, and it also to do with a lot of people not being comfortable talking about, this thing. So indirectly, if we can create a culture and environment for them to feel comfortable with this thing, I think that itself plays an important role. I have one more question which has come up. Possibly, any one of you can answer. What are the two things, or maybe all of you should attempt? What are the two things which will have negative impact due to technology for employees and corporates, and how can we minimize? How can it be minimized?
Okay, can I start?
Yeah, please.
So adoption versus addiction is something, you see. Overuse of this. With time it will subside definitely, but necessarily that you have to one is operating from home, and different people have got different infrastructure and facilities at home, and forcing people to attend day-long meetings should be a no. It is, if it is available at your fingertips or you have a better Wi-Fi, and you should be forcing that on people, that shouldn't be done. Allow them to work, because they, as I said, in the current times, everyone values the job, and they are here not to fail. They will, so to say, operate as average people, or above average or below average, but everybody wants to contribute, you see, because they have obligations towards their family members. So one point that I clearly think of is adoption versus addiction, and over usage of technology has its negative impact. This is my submission to the table.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting point you bring up. Balancing it out is very, very important. There's also an element of fatigue that comes in. Many of us are facing that, the technology fatigue seeping in, morning to evening, staring at a screen, missing the human touch is creating a bit of fatigue now. And I also feel that there is a lot of a big part of an organization culture is developed through lunch breaks, coffee breaks, meeting each other, talking to each other, having that rapport. I think we all have experienced that not everything gets done within the process framework. A lot of it is done basis relationships, where you just walk over to somebody and ask for an extra time to deliver something, or ask for their help or perspective on a certain thing that you're currently working on. These small informal conversations and informal reach outs are getting more and more difficult today. And many of us who were lucky enough to have built those bonds before the pandemic hit us are still leveraging the old bonds, and kind of encashing that even now while we are working from home. But the people who have shifted jobs during this pandemic, they don't have that luxury. They haven't built that bond as yet with their colleagues, and they are feeling the pinch of not being part of that infrastructure where you can just reach out to people and connect with them. I think that is very crucial, which we are missing today, and it will continue to deplete the culture if it continues for a longish period of time. The other aspect is that many of us who are in a privileged spot to make policies of this sort also have a privilege of having a reasonable infrastructure at home. We would have our laptops, our kids have online classes, we will have the ability to provide them a laptop or an iPad, there's a steady Wi-Fi, all of those things which we take for granted. Not everybody has access to that. There are colleagues and homes where I've seen that both husband and wife are taking call from the same room. You can hear the echo in the background, and the kid is also playing in the same room, right? They don't have multiple rooms to go and mind their own office times, right? They don't have a segregated office space because they live in a smaller place, right? So not everybody has the luxury of infrastructure, and trying to stretch that existing infrastructure to make it work for everybody also takes a toll on your personal relationships. So I think these are some aspects which I think have started to show their impact on our work environment, and these are slightly on a lighter side, the negatives of technology that we are dealing with. Yeah.
I think I couldn't agree more with Dinesh and Parneet. What Parneet mentioned about, and even Dinesh mentioned about not everyone having the right infra. I think it also affects, while office or maybe online school takes precedence, but it really may have a negative impact on the lives of the other people in the house, and their whole lack of space or privacy or what they want to do. So I think it would definitely affect family relationships. Also, during the pandemic, on online calls, I think we've all become more tolerant of each other, of intrusions and stuff. But in the long run, it may not pan out the same. So then really chances of employability for people, if work from home becomes a long-term thing, chances of employability for people who do not have the relevant infra at home could get impacted. And hence, I think that is something to be kept in mind, because that would create a kind of discrimination. So that's one. And the other is, I've heard a lot of people already saying, while of course we would like to come to office once in a while, but I don't want to wear formal trousers ever again, and I don't want to come to. So I think that maybe just, this period of this thing stretching for a while might sort of make us resistant towards coming back to office, and hence the office culture part definitely can suffer. And like Parneet mentioned, when we all started out in the pandemic, largely we were all people whom we knew already, and hence the organization has continued to function normally and the culture has not got impacted in a big way. But as the churn happens and more people come in who don't have relationships already, it will start having a significant impact on how the organization culture evolves.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think I completely agree, on this point. And like Pranit mentioned, I think we will have to look at from our end. Policies are being created to ensure that everybody in the organization, top to down, everybody is being given that kind of comfort to work around. Great. So thanks a lot for taking out time. I think it's been a pleasure having all of you, as part of the panel. And thank you on behalf of participants, and thanks to all the participants for taking out time and logging in this weekly discussion. So thanks a lot. Thanks Swati. Thanks Dinesh. Thanks Puneet. Thank you for taking out time.